It was a warm evening in Accra, Ghana. The family had just finished dinner, and the smell of jollof rice still hung in the air. Kwabena, a quiet and hard-working man, stood up with a soft smile. He wanted nothing more than to hug his twin children goodnight. "Come here, my babies," he said gently, opening his arms. But before the children could move, Selina's sharp voice cut through the room. "Don't talk to my kids," she shouted, her face cold and full of anger. The words hit him like a slap. The room fell silent. Even the twins, usually full of laughter, froze in place. Their big brown eyes darted between their parents, confused and scared. Kwabena blinked, unsure if he'd heard right. "Selina, what did you just say?" he asked quietly. She rolled her eyes, grabbed her phone and snapped, "You heard me. Go play father somewhere else." Then she stormed out of the room, already on a call with someone named Mark. The sound of her laughter from the hallway broke something inside him. The twins stood there, still silent, torn between love and fear. That night, Kwabena sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wedding photo on the wall, the smiles that now felt like lies. Without a word, he packed a small bag with 2 shirts, his old work boots, and a photo of his children. Before leaving, he whispered softly, "Papa loves you. Always." Then he walked out into the night, heart heavy, unsure if his children would ever hear the truth. Kwabena moved into a small, lonely room behind the car garage where he worked. The walls were cracked, the fan made more noise than wind, and the mattress was thin, but it was all he could afford. Every night, after fixing cars until his hands ached, he sat by the small window and looked at a photo of his twins. He missed their laughter, the way they used to run into his arms when he came home from work. Even though Selina had pushed him out, Kwabena never stopped being a father. Every week he sent money for food, school fees, and clothes. He made sure they never went without, even if it meant eating plain bread for dinner himself. When he sent the money, he would always write a short message. "Tell the kids Papa loves them." But Selina never replied. Sometimes she blocked his calls, sometimes she just hung up. "Please, Selina, just let me speak to them for 1 minute," he begged one night over the phone. She laughed bitterly. "They don't need you anymore. Focus on your new life." Then the line went dead. He sat there, staring at his phone, tears rolling down his face. The silence of that tiny room felt heavier than ever. But love doesn't die that easily. Though he didn't know it, the twins still whispered his name at night. When their mother was asleep, they knelt beside their bed and prayed softly. "Dear God, please keep Papa K safe," they whispered, holding hands. That was their secret, calling him Papa K, the name their mother forbade them to say aloud. At school, when Father's Day came, they hid their drawings under their pillows instead of giving them to Selina. Little notes that said, "I love you, Papa K. One day we'll see you again." Meanwhile, Kwabena worked harder than ever. He fixed cars in the scorching sun, often skipping lunch so he could save more money for his children's future. His co-workers noticed the sadness in his eyes but respected his quiet strength. One of them, Yaw, once asked, "Kwabena, why do you keep sending money to a woman who won't even let you talk to your kids?" Kwabena smiled faintly. "Because being a father doesn't stop when someone closes the door. My love still lives in that house, even if I can't." At night, he sat by his small window and looked up at the stars, wondering if his twins were looking at the same sky. The distance between them hurt, but somewhere deep inside, he believed they still felt his love. And in truth they did. Though their mother tried to erase him, his name lived in their hearts, carried softly in bedtime prayers and whispered dreams, a love that no wall, no lie, and no distance could ever destroy. It was a hot afternoon in Accra when Kwabena's phone buzzed. It was a message from his old friend, Kojo, who worked as a driver near one of the city's fancy hotels. "Bro, I think you should come here," the message read. "I just saw Selina, and she's not alone." Kwabena frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" he replied. But before Kojo could type back, another message came through. A photo. There she was, Selina, dressed in a bright yellow dress, laughing, holding hands with a man Kwabena had heard about too many times. Mark, her so-called business partner. They looked happy. Too happy. Like two people who didn't care who saw them. For a long moment, Kwabena just stared at the photo. His chest felt heavy, his eyes burned. He didn't want to believe it. Maybe it was a misunderstanding, maybe there was some reason. But deep down he knew. This was the truth he'd been avoiding. Selina hadn't just turned cold, she'd moved on long before he left. That night he couldn't eat. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the floor, remembering how she used to smile when they were young, when she still believed in their dreams. Now, she was laughing in someone else's arms, using the same phone he once bought her with his savings. The next morning he called her one last time. "Selina," he said softly, "I saw a picture of you and Mark. Is that what it is now?" There was silence for a few seconds. Then she said coldly, "Believe what you want, Kwabena. You left. I moved on." His throat tightened. "I didn't leave, Selina. You pushed me out." But before he could say more, she hung up. That was the moment Kwabena stopped trying to fix something that was already broken. He finally understood that she had not only betrayed his love but also poisoned their children's hearts against him, telling them lies, painting him as the bad man who abandoned them. Still, he didn't fight back. He didn't go around telling people the truth. He didn't shout or argue. He chose silence, not because he was weak, but because he knew time always exposes lies. From that day, Kwabena focused on one thing: building a better life for his twins. He worked longer hours, took on extra repair jobs, and started saving every sadie he could. He stopped drinking tea at work, stopped taking taxis, and walked home every night just to save a few coins. When his co-workers asked why he was working so hard, he only smiled and said, "I'm building something. Not for her, not for me, but for them." He didn't tell anyone what that something was. But deep in his heart, Kwabena was planting the seeds of a comeback, quiet, steady, and strong, while the woman who betrayed him chased comfort that would one day crumble. Months passed, and Selina's house looked perfect from the outside: shiny cars, expensive clothes, and smiling photos on social media. But inside, things were falling apart. Mark, the man she once called her business partner, was now always angry. The laughter that once filled the house had turned into shouting and slammed doors. One evening after dinner, the twins were in their room doing homework when they heard loud voices coming from the living room. First they ignored it. Their mother and Mark argued often, but this time it sounded worse. His voice was louder, sharper, filled with anger. "You used that poor man's money to build your lifestyle, and you can't even keep me happy?" Mark shouted. The twins froze. Their pencils stopped moving. "What are you talking about?" Selina snapped back. "Oh, don't act innocent," he said bitterly. "All that money you flaunt, it's from that fool of a husband you threw away. You told everyone he abandoned you, but you were living off his hard work while lying to those kids." The room went silent. The twins could hear their mother's voice trembling. "Keep your voice down. They'll hear you." But it was too late. They already had. The older twin, Kofi, looked at his sister, Amma, eyes wide with confusion. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. Amma nodded slowly, her heart pounding. "He said Papa's money, but Mom said he left us with nothing." They quietly moved closer to the door, listening as their mother started to cry. "You don't understand Mark," she said. "He deserved it. He was too soft. He wouldn't have given me the life I wanted." Mark scoffed. "And yet, with all his money, you still can't buy peace. You're nothing without him, Selina." Then the door slammed, and his footsteps echoed as he stormed out. The twins crept back to their beds, their minds spinning. They had always believed their father stopped caring, that he'd walked away and never looked back. But now, everything made sense. The new clothes, the expensive house, their mother's anger whenever they mentioned his name. It was all built on lies. That night, Amma cried silently under her blanket. "Why would she lie about Papa?" she whispered. Kofi clenched his fists. "Because she didn't want us to love him," he said softly. "But I remember how he used to tuck us in. He never shouted. He always said he'd do anything for us." The next morning, when Selina came to wake them, they couldn't even look her in the eye. The bond that had already started cracking finally broke. And for the first time, the twins didn't pray for their mother that night. They prayed for Papa K, the father they were finally beginning to remember, The man they now knew had never stopped loving them. Kwabina's life slowly began to change. What started as a few small repair jobs under a mango tree turned into something much bigger. Every morning, he opened his small workshop before sunrise and didn't close until long after sunset. His hands were always covered in oil, his shirt stained, but his heart was full of quiet determination. He didn't just fix cars, he fixed lives. He hired young boys from the streets, taught them how to hold a wrench, how to check an engine, how to stand tall and work with pride. "We're not just repairing cars," he would tell them. "We're repairing our futures." Within a year, word spread across Accra. "Go to K-Tech Garage," people said. "That man can bring a dead car back to life." Business boomed. Customers lined up every day, and his small space turned into a busy workshop filled with laughter, hard work, and the smell of grease and hope. He saved every cedi wisely, not to show off, but to build something that would last. When a local youth organization approached him, he decided to give back. He started a small scholarship fund for apprentices who wanted to learn the trade but couldn't afford the tools. "No dream should die because of poverty," he said simply. Soon 15 young men were working under him, calling him Boss K with pride. But even with all the success, one thing was missing: his children. Every time he heard laughter in the street, his heart tightened a little. He'd see twins walking home from school and stop for a moment, lost in thought. "Are my babies growing tall?" he'd wonder. "Do they still remember my voice?" Sometimes at night, he would sit outside the workshop, staring at the stars, whispering, "Ama Kofi, Papa loves you. I'm still here." He didn't know that at that very moment, his twins were thinking about him too, praying for him, just as they had since the day he left. His friends often told him, "Kwabina, you've made it. You're a success now. Forget the past." But he always smiled sadly and said, "Success means nothing if the people you love can't share it with you." Despite the pain, he stayed humble. He didn't let bitterness rule his heart. He believed that one day, somehow, the truth would bring his children back to him. And deep inside, he was preparing for that day. The day they would see him not as the man their mother painted as a failure, but as the father who never stopped loving, working, and waiting. Every bolt he tightened, every car he fixed, every young man he mentored, it was all part of his quiet comeback. He was no longer the broken man who walked out that night. He was building something stronger. A new life, one that love and honesty could finally call home. The night rain poured hard over Accra. Kwabina was locking up his workshop, the sound of raindrops hitting the tin roof mixing with the hum of passing cars. He was tired, his shirt soaked with sweat and oil, his hands rough from a long day's work. He picked up his wrench, ready to close for the night, when he noticed something strange. Under the dim yellow streetlight across the road, 2 small figures stood, shivering, their school bags clutched tightly to their chests. At first, he thought they were just lost children waiting for a ride. But as he looked closer, his heart skipped. He knew those faces, even after all this time. "Ama, Kofi," he whispered, stepping closer. The 2 children turned toward him. Their eyes were full of tears, their clothes soaked through, and their lips trembling. "Papa," Ama said softly. The wrench fell from his hand, hitting the wet ground with a loud clang. In the next second he was running, straight through the rain, straight to them. He dropped to his knees and pulled them both into his arms, holding them so tightly as if letting go would make them disappear again. "My babies, what are you doing here?" he asked, voice breaking. "You'll get sick out here." Kofi buried his face in his father's shoulder. "We had to come, Papa. Mama got angry because we said your name. She slapped Ama and said you were dead to us. We couldn't stay anymore." Kwabina's eyes filled with tears. He looked at their tired faces, the bruised cheek on Ama's face, and felt a mix of heartbreak and relief. "Oh my God, you came all this way. We just want to stay where love feels real," Ama whispered, holding his shirt tightly. Kwabina hugged them again, his heart pounding with both pain and joy. The rain soaked all 3 of them, but none of them cared. It was the first time in years that he felt whole again. He quickly led them into the workshop, grabbing an old towel to dry them off. He made them warm tea on his small gas stove and found 2 spare shirts for them to wear. They sat close to him, their little bodies shivering, but their eyes full of peace. As they drank the tea, Amma looked around the room. "Is this where you live now, Papa?" Kwabena nodded with a small smile. "Yes, my princess. It's not much, but it's home." Kofi leaned against him. "It's better than where we came from. At least here it feels safe." Kwabena blinked away tears and kissed their foreheads. "From now on, you'll never have to wonder if you're loved. You're home now. With me." Outside, the rain kept falling, but inside that tiny workshop, for the first time in years, there was warmth. A father and his children, finally together again, bound by a love that had survived every storm. The next morning the rain had stopped, but the sky still looked heavy, gray and tense, almost like it knew a storm was coming. Kwabena had just finished making breakfast for the twins, a simple plate of bread and eggs, when he heard the loud screech of car tires outside his workshop. Before he could even step out, a voice screamed his name. "Kwabena!" It was Selina. She stormed out of a black car, her heels splashing through the puddles, her face twisted with anger. Her hair was messy, her eyes red, a woman burning with rage and pride. "You kidnapped my children," she yelled, pointing a shaking finger at him. "How dare you take them away from me?" The twins, who were sitting quietly inside, froze. Amma grabbed her brother's hand. "Papa, she's here." Kwabena's heart started pounding. He stepped outside, keeping his voice calm. "Selina, lower your voice." The children came on their own. They were lies, she shouted, cutting him off. "You've poisoned their minds just like you tried to poison mine. I'm calling the police." She pulled out her phone, her hands trembling with fury. But before she could dial, another voice echoed across the street. "Selina, stop this madness." Everyone turned. It was Auntie Ajoa, Selina's own mother, walking slowly toward them, holding an umbrella. Her face was tired, but her eyes were firm. She had heard everything from a neighbor who saw the fight the night before. "Ma, stay out of this," Selina snapped. "He stole my children." Auntie Ajoa's voice rose, stronger this time. "No, Selina. They ran from you." Selina froze. "They're not running from him," Auntie Ajoa continued, stepping closer. "They're running from what you've become, bitter, greedy, and cruel. You pushed their father away, and now you're trying to destroy what little peace they have left." Kwabena stood silently, his hands trembling slightly. The twins peeked from behind him, holding each other tightly. Selina's eyes filled with tears, but her anger refused to break. "You're taking his side too," she shouted. "You never believed in me." Auntie Ajoa shook her head. "I believed in you, Selina. But somewhere along the way you stopped believing in love, in family. You let pride turn you into a stranger." Selina's phone slipped from her hand, falling into a puddle. She looked at her children, their eyes filled with fear and hurt, and for a moment all the fight drained out of her. Amma stepped forward timidly. "Mama, we just wanted to be where love feels real. We didn't mean to hurt you." Tears spilled down Selina's cheeks. She tried to speak, but no words came. She turned away, covered her face, and walked back to her car in silence. As the car drove off, Auntie Ajoa sighed deeply. "She needs time," she said softly. Kwabena nodded, hugging his twins close. "We all do," he whispered. The storm had passed, not the one in the sky, but the one that had been raging in their hearts. And for the first time in years, peace began to find its way back to them. A few weeks later, a court letter arrived at Kwabena's workshop. Selina had filed a custody case, claiming that he had illegally taken her children. Kwabena stared at the paper for a long time, his chest tight. He knew she wouldn't give up easily, but he also knew he had nothing to hide. When the court day came, the small courtroom in Accra was packed. Friends, neighbors, and even some of Kwabena's apprentices came to show support. Selina walked in wearing an expensive dress, her makeup perfect, her head held high. She looked confident, as if she was sure the judge would take her side. Kwabena, on the other hand, sat quietly in his simple shirt, holding a folder of documents. He wasn't there to fight. He was there to tell the truth. Selina's lawyer started first. "Your Honor," he said loudly, "this man abandoned his family and is now trying to steal the children he never cared for. My client, Selina Mensa, provided everything for them. The judge turned to Kwabena. Mr. Kwabena, do you have anything to say? Kwabena stood slowly, his voice calm but steady. Your Honor, I may not have much money or fancy words. But I never abandoned my children. I sent money every week. I paid school fees, hospital bills, even groceries. I have proof. He handed over his bank records. Line by line, the judge could see the transfers, every payment from Kwabena's small account to Selina's. Then came witness statements, from his co-workers, the school accountant, and even Auntie Ajoa, who testified that Selina had used the money to buy luxury things for herself instead of the kids. The courtroom grew quiet. Even Selina's confident smile began to fade. Then the judge looked up from the papers. Mrs. Mensa, he said firmly, it appears your husband has been supporting this family all along, even while living apart. Yet you denied him access to his children. Why? Selina's lips trembled. She couldn't find an answer. Her hands fidgeted with her purse, her eyes darting around the room. The twins sat in the front row, holding each other's hands. The judge looked at them gently. Children, I must decide who you'll live with. Tell me, where do you feel most at home? Amma looked up, her eyes brave but wet with tears. With Papa, she whispered. That's where love feels real. The courtroom went silent again. Kofi nodded quickly, squeezing his sister's hand. We just want to stay with him, sir. The judge leaned back, sighing softly. Then it's decided. Joint custody. But the children will live with their father. Selina's face went pale. She stared at the twins as tears filled her eyes. They were supposed to love me more, she whispered brokenly, her voice barely audible. Kwabena looked at her with quiet sadness. Love isn't a competition, Selina, he said softly. It's something you earn, not something you buy. As the court adjourned, the twins ran to hug their father tightly. Outside, under the bright Ghanaian sun, Kwabena held them close, his heart finally at peace. For years he had lived with silence and pain, but now, the truth had spoken louder than every lie. Months later, life finally began to feel like peace again for Kwabena. The small workshop that once barely made ends meet had now grown into a full-fledged business, K-Tech Motors. What started as a single garage under a rusted roof was now a bright, bustling workshop with the sound of machines humming and young men in uniforms fixing cars with pride. His name had spread all over Accra. Customers trusted him, neighbors respected him, and young apprentices looked up to him as a mentor. But even with all the success, what made his heart truly full were the two faces that ran into his arms every evening, his twins. Every morning, Kwabena drove them to their new school, one he had once only dreamed of affording. He watched them walk through the gates in clean uniforms, laughing and holding hands. The teachers said the twins were bright, polite, and kind. They'd become top students, and every award ceremony felt like a small miracle to him. Their laughter filled his house again, a home that smelled of fried plantain, engine oil, and joy. In the evenings, he'd help them with homework at the dining table while a pot of soup simmered on the stove. Sometimes they'd tease him about his handwriting, and he'd pretend to get angry just to make them laugh harder. The house that once echoed with silence now danced with the sound of stories, jokes, and dreams. But one Saturday afternoon, as Kwabena wiped grease from his hands, he saw a familiar car pull up outside the workshop. His heart tightened. 'Twas Selina. She stepped out, dressed neatly but looking smaller somehow. The confidence she once wore like armor was gone. She looked tired, guilty, human. Kwabena, she said softly, avoiding his eyes. I came to see the kids. The twins ran up to her. There was hesitation in their steps, a mixture of love and pain. She hugged them, tears slipping down her face. For a moment, even Kwabena's chest ached with old memories. He remembered the laughter they once shared, the home they once dreamed of building. After a few minutes, Selina looked at him and whispered, I know I messed up. I want to fix things. Kwabena's eyes were calm but firm. Selina, he said gently, forgiveness doesn't mean access. She blinked, confused. He continued, I've forgiven you for what happened, but that doesn't mean we can go back to how things were. The kids need peace. I need peace. And peace doesn't come from reopening old wounds. Selina nodded slowly, tears streaming silently now. She hugged the twins again before walking back to her car. As she drove away, Kwabena looked at his children. They smiled at him, a smile full of safety and trust. And in that moment, he realized something powerful. Sometimes losing what hurts you is the only way to find what heals you. From that day on, K-Tech Motors kept growing. The twins flourished. And though Selina visited once in a while, it was always respectful, a quiet reminder of the past, not a disruption of the present. Kwabena had finally built what he always wanted, not just success, but a home where love felt real, steady, and earned. Years had passed since Kwabena first left the house that had been full of lies and silence. His workshop had grown into a thriving business. His children had flourished, and their small home was now filled with laughter, love, and hope. Now, the day had come for their graduation, a proud moment that marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. The school hall was packed. Parents, teachers, and students filled every seat, cheering and clapping. The MC stood on stage, microphone in hand, and called out, "Parents, please stand for your graduating children." Kwabena's heart thumped in his chest. The twins, now tall and confident, walked up the aisle holding his hands tightly. Their smiles were bright, their eyes shining with pride. When they reached the stage, they turned to the crowd and spoke together. "This is the man who never left, even when we were told to leave him," Amma and Kofi said clearly, their voices strong but full of emotion. The hall erupted in applause. People stood, cheering for the quiet, hard-working father who had never given up on his children. Kwabena's eyes filled with tears, and he hugged his twins tightly, feeling the weight of years of struggle melt away. In the back row, Selina sat quietly, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She wiped at her tears silently, unable to speak. She realized, too late, that all the money, the luxuries, and the status she once chased could never replace the love of a father who stayed when it mattered most. Kwabena looked at her briefly, not with anger, but with quiet peace. His children's happiness was the reward he had worked for, the proof that love remembered lasts longer than money ever could. As the ceremony continued, the applause echoed in his ears, a reminder that loyalty, patience, and unwavering love could outshine every betrayal, every hardship, and every painful night of longing. For Kwabena and his twins, this was more than graduation. It was a celebration of love, resilience, and the bond that no one could ever break.